So on this latest recap, I explain exactly why the US athleisure retailers have kicked off the week on such a stellar footing. We've recently heard from Gap, who gave us not only an update for their latest quarter, but also an insight into what they're thinking of doing with the European business. And could this have ramifications for us over here if we're looking to get hold of some of the Yeezy Gap merchandise when it drops later in the year? We're also seeing some sneaker drops delayed or cancelled completely in certain regions. So I'm going to take another look at what's happening in the shipping world and freights and the delays and bottlenecks to try and explain exactly why this could be having such a big impact. And lastly, I'm going to give you a little management change that happened at a place called Shoe Zone in the last week. And I'm pretty sure when I explain the details, you'll think it's quite funny. So I'm going to start with these US athleisure retailers. We saw Foot Locker and Dick's shares rising in the region of about 9 or 10% at the beginning of the week. Hibbett Sports were up even more so. What's going on? Well, it's to do with President Biden's stimulus checks. At the moment, the stimulus bill is being voted. It's been voted through the Senate and is going back to the House to be voted through. It's $1.9 trillion, but it will see stimulus checks of $1,400 sent out across the US. Now, when this happened in the second half of last year, the athleisure retailers benefited because people use this money to go out and buy sneakers and buy athleisure products, etc., etc. So for us here in the UK, JD Sports, they get 30% of their sales coming out of the US via Finish Line, as well as Downtown Locker Room on the East Coast and Shoe Palace on the West Coast. Those two recent fresh acquisitions. Also keep an eye on the meme stocks, the Reddit platform stocks that benefited because I'm sure quite a large amount of the stimulus checks might be used by people to punt on the stock exchange. So be aware that we might well see some of those stories resurrected. I'm going to move on to Gap now. They gave us an update on their quarter, but they also gave us an insight into what they're thinking of doing with the European business. They have it under a strategic review. They're talking about the possibility of having a model change. Now, what does this exactly mean? Well, at the moment, it's costing them a lot of money to run this European business, and they're thinking of changing how it's set up. They're looking at partner or franchise options. If they do go down this route, revenues will decrease, but actually the operating costs to run the business will go down even more so. So what does this exactly mean? Well, Next, for instance, are involved in partner programs. You can go onto a Next website and you can buy branded goods. So that's an example of how partner programs work there. So we don't know exactly what they're going to do with the European business, but let's hope something's put in place by the time the Yeezy stuff drops later on in the year. And who knows, you might even have to be going on to Next online to order some of your Yeezy Gap gear. So keep an eye, watch this space. On to some of these shipping delays. Now, this shoe not only is an absolute banger, but the drop was cancelled in the US. There was no actual official reason given. Some people are saying that there was some manufacturing issues and the numbers manufactured weren't quite up to what they expected. But I wouldn't be surprised if the current shipping delays that we're seeing and the bottlenecks could have had something to do with it. So I'm going to very briefly explain exactly how it works in normal times and what's happened at the moment. Ordinarily, what happens is products that we buy in the Western world, so in Europe and the US, are manufactured in China and Asia. They get shipped over, say, to the west coast of the US. That takes 30 to 40 days. These huge, great big 40-foot container units that you see on trains, on the back of lorries, etc., they're stacked high on these huge, great big super tanker type boats. When they get to the port, they're unloaded, they're then distributed around the US. They go on trains, they go on the back of lorries, they go to wherever their endpoint is, the products are unloaded, and then on the way back to the ports, they might be filled with soybean, bits and pieces that US businesses are selling to be consumed back in Asia. Well, during the pandemic, the appetite for products, electronic products, and also medical PPE products, etc., has been so huge by the West that loads of stuff's being manufactured still out of Asia. It's getting shipped over, but the containers are getting sent back empty. That's because the Chinese want to get them back so quickly. It's costing them money that they're empty. They want to get them back so quickly so they can restock them up with new stuff that's been bought and send it back over. So not only is that causing problems for businesses that would normally use those empty containers to send stuff back over to Asia, but it's actually also pushing up the price of freight. Now, a 40-foot container, it could cost $2,000 to $2,500 to ship that one unit. I've seen in an article that I read that some of these rates are $6,000-7,000 now for the same container to be shipped. Now, these margins, they just don't have these margins floating around for businesses to be able to just willy-nilly pay that. Some people are using air freight, which is a lot quicker but a lot more expensive. Some of the bottlenecks we've got is because ports aren't necessarily running fully staffed because people might be off sick, etc., due to the COVID stuff. We've had lorry drivers as well that might have been off sick too. So you've had this big backlog and bottleneck where they just can't process this stuff, and you've got boats floating out in the water ready to unload stuff, and it just can't be unloaded quick enough. The other problem we've had is that when a lot of this PPE equipment, etc., is being delivered, they would go to other ports, other countries that aren't necessarily big back and forth trading routes, if you like, sort of day-to-day ones. So you found there's a load of empty containers sitting in those ports, but they won't send the boats to go and get them because they're making much more money toing and froing between the very popular routes. So you've got empty containers sitting in some countries, whilst the other ones there's a lack of containers and the demand for them is so high they're getting taken back empty. So we didn't actually hear whether that was why this trainer drop in the US was completely cancelled, but I wouldn't be surprised if it has something to do with it. I read an article in the New York Times. I can send you the link if anyone wants it, or if anyone wants to discuss more about shipping, freight, bottlenecks, etc., please do give me a shout. And just very briefly, Shoe Zone, they have recently made some management change. Their current CFO, or Chief Financial Officer, was named Peter Foot. Now, he is leaving the company and he's being replaced by a chap called Terry Boot. There we go. It made me laugh. If there's two guys that are definitely made with a surname like that to work in that industry, then I don't know what is. So anyway, any questions, anything at all you want to ask, please do give me a shout. I'm Andy Wilson, the Sneaker Dog, the Sneakonmics. Please make sure that you are following me on Instagram and you have all the notifications, the likes, the saves, and comment, and I'll see you soon.